Hello, welcome back. My name is Jake, and today is episode number 7 of the Music Theory Basics course. And very fittingly, today we are talking about 7th chords, what they are, how to make them, how to play them, and why they are so useful. So, let's dig in.
Hello and welcome. I am Jake, a full-time musician and music educator based in Portland, Oregon. I make about half my living recording, touring, and performing, and the other half teaching lessons in guitar, piano, voice, songwriting, and more. And that's why I'm here on YouTube, to share with people around the world my music, my experience, and the lessons that have helped me along the way.
Okay, so for a long time, I was sort of mystified by 7th chords. I knew how to make them and play some of them on the guitar, but I kind of thought that they were just reserved for certain styles of music or, just used for blues or jazz. And I didn't understand really where they came from or what the differences in sound were. So the way that I've come to understand and use 7th chords is that they have a more nuanced emotional vocabulary. So what I mean by that is that we start out and we learned about triads in the last episode, and we sort of had major triads and minor triads making up a bulk of the triads that we're going to use. And we think of those as being happy and being sad. So we sort of have these two ends of the spectrum, right? Happy, sad. We have joy, we have sort of dark, spooky on the other end. But to me, the 7th chords, we start to get different emotions along that spectrum. So we can have things like melancholy, we can have sounds that are bittersweet, both kind of happy and sad at the same time. We can have things that are bluesy and funky and edgy. What I want to do in today's lesson is take a look at exactly how to build those, exactly what notes we are using and what makes a 7th chord a 7th chord, and then how to apply them, how to understand the differences in sound between the different types of 7th chords, and then how to use them. So let's take a look at how they're made. Boom. Okay, hello. As you can see, I'm still trying to work out my lighting setup here, trying to make it so that the keys are illuminated with no harsh shadows, and let me tell you, that is easier said than done. So if anybody got any suggestions, go ahead and leave them in the comments for me. All right, we're talking about 7th chords. So, very fundamentally, let's talk about how 7th chords get their name. And the reason for that is that we are going to play the 7th, and by that I mean the 7th note or the 7th interval away from the root. So in a triad, as we saw previously, we have the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, and here we are just going to add the 7th or the 7th note away from the root note. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Boom. There we go. And we get a 7th chord. Now, this chord right here is called a C major 7th. So what we're going to do for right now is we're going to walk this up. I'm going to hit on a couple different types of 7th chords, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about what makes those different. So here we have a C major 7. Now I'm thinking about this in the key of C, so this is chord number 1, and I'm just going to walk this up. And remember, what we know about the key of C is that it is all natural. To me, this is the easiest to illustrate. So we start with the key of C. We have a C major 7th. As we walk that up, we get a D minor 7th, an E minor 7th, F major 7th, G7 or G dominant 7th, A minor 7th. We're going to hold off on B for right now. I'll circle back to diminished 7th in just a second. So, the 3 fundamental types of 7th. We have a major 7th, minor 7th, and dominant 7th. So let's talk about what make each of those unique. So in the major 7 is defined as being a major triad, and then the major 7th interval on top. And so again, we're talking about a major seventh away from the root note of that chord. And you'll remember from the intervals lesson that a major seventh is always 11 half steps. So very specifically, 11 half steps. Also, for ease, we can think of it as being a half step down from the root note, right? A half step down. So that is the major seventh interval. So here we have a major triad plus the major seventh on top. Now, major seventh chords have this really dreamy, really sweet, kind of surreal, nice, nostalgic, bittersweet, melancholic, dreamy sound to them. And there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, because if we look at what we are playing, we have a major triad on the bottom, but then those top three notes make a minor triad. So here we have major and minor at the same time. So quite literally, bittersweet, right? Major and minor at the same time in this one. Now also, we have this interval of the major seventh. So from C to B. That interval, C and B, are kind of jarring, right? If I played them right next to each other, it would be kind of crunchy. But here, they're masked by the other. So just under the surface, we have the tension of that major seventh interval. And we'll contrast that to the minor seventh. So a minor seventh is defined as being a minor triad plus the minor seventh interval on top, which is 10 half steps or one whole step down from the root note that we started on. So here we have a minor seventh, and again we can see this minor triad on the bottom, but we have a major triad on the top. But the difference is that here we have a minor seventh interval, which is a little more palatable than the major seventh interval that we just saw. So here we have a major chord, we have a minor triad, we also have a major triad in there, and then we have this minor seventh interval, which again is just a little easier to stomach. It's just a little nicer, a little softer. That's why you'll see we see these in R&B and jazz all the time. They're very smooth, really nice. So they have this kind of major, minor, bittersweet, but they're a little easier on the ears. Again, we have this F major seventh, and then I get to a D7 or a D dominant seven. So the dominant seventh chord is defined as being a major triad with a minor seventh on top. So if you remember, the major seventh chord was a major and a major triad, major seventh. But here we have a major triad and then the minor seventh. Remember that minor seventh is always a whole step down from the root or 10 half steps up. So here we have the dominant seventh chord. And we can see that the two triads within this, we have a G, right? G major, but we also have a B diminished. So we have this G major, we have this B diminished, and then right in here, this B and this F in this case are making a tritone. So within this dominant seventh chords, one of the reasons that give it that bluesy, funky, kind of crunchy sound, the reason it gets used in blues music all the time, the reason it gets used in blues all the time and funk is because it has this tritone right under the surface. So there's a little bit of clash, there's a little bit of tension right there. So again, when we walk it up, we get a major seven, minor seven, major seven, dominant seven, minor seven, and then last but not least, we get a B half diminished seven or a B minor seven flat 5. So again, these are not as common. They do get used in jazz all the time. And just briefly, the reason we would call it a B minor 7 flat 5, which is used primarily in jazz vocabulary, is because here I have a B minor 7, B minor, minor 7th interval, but the B half diminished takes that 5th, flats it, brings it down a half step. So now I have a B half diminished 7th, or a B minor 7 flat 5. And the reason we would call it half diminished is because fully diminished is the result of stacking minor thirds. I have a minor third, and a minor third, which would give me this G sharp or this A flat on top. A nice tense chord. This would be B fully diminished. But in the key of C, again, we are looking at all natural notes, so I get a B minor 7 flat 5, or a B half diminished 7, and then we get back to C. So there you have it. We have three main types of 7th chords. We have the major 7th, we have the minor 7th, we have the dominant 7th, and then also we have the diminished, the half diminished, the fully diminished. There is also a major minor 7. There is also a minor major 7, which is a really kind of funky, kind of a difficult one, but the minor major 7, it doesn't get used all that often, but that I think is the last variety of 7th chord. Correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so just a quick little recap of what we've learned so far. So a 7th chord is named because we're adding the 7th note up from the root note. So whereas a triad is built on the root, the 3rd, and the 5th, now with the 7th chord, we are adding the 7th note up. So we have three main types of 7th chords. And yes, there are more, and those get used in specific situations. But for the most part, the most of what you are going to see will be a major 7th chord, a minor 7th chord, or a dominant 7th chord. So a major 7 gets its name because it's a major triad with a major 7th interval. A minor 7th is a minor triad with a minor 7th interval. And a dominant 7th is a major triad with a minor 7th interval. Now, we also have diminished, we also have half diminished and fully diminished, we also have minor major 7ths, but again, those don't get used all that often. So for today's lesson, it's important to remember major 7ths, minor 7ths, and dominant 7ths. All right, guitarists, gather around. We had a little fireside chat here about the guitar. So, as we just saw, when we walk those 7th chords up the key, we get a few different varieties. Now, on the guitar, there's a couple things we want to think about. Number one is how to play those in open shapes, in open position, right? So how do we play those lower down on the neck of the guitar? So for example, C major 7, F major 7, D7, G7, E7, A7, A major 7, A minor 7. So how do we go from A major and A minor to A7, A major 7, A minor 7, for example? So how do we start to conjugate these different types of chords? And to take it one step further, when we're thinking specifically about the A shape and the E shape, those are going to apply for the most part when we start playing bar chords. So that's kind of the next step. So there's a few things going on. Number one is just knowing how to kind of make these different shapes, right? 7, minor 7, major 7 in different places. And then also understanding where the 7th interval is within the chord. Because again, on the guitar, things are all mixed up. So here, I have my root, my 5th, my octave, and then a third. And when I want to play the seventh, I know that this is a major seventh being half step down from the octave. We're gonna get to this stuff. This could be a whole lesson on its own, and it will be. I don't mean to just gloss over these things and kind of take them for granted. But I did want to say that as a quick aside, as somebody whose primary instrument is guitar, it is easiest to learn and visualize these things on the piano. But when we take them and we apply them to the guitar, like I was saying, it's first important to learn those open positions and those open shapes. And then to take that one step further, looking at bar chords, looking at our intervals within those bar chords and those movable shapes. So where is that seventh exactly? And then how does that shift to give us a major seventh, a minor seventh, or a dominant seventh? So that's all I'll say for now. More on that later. I feel like I say that a lot. Okay, so that brings us back to the million-dollar question, why? Why would we want to learn seventh chords and learn how to play them? Now, obviously, if you are learning songs, whether that's songs from the real book or your favorite pop songs, you're gonna encounter a lot of seventh chords. And it's important to be able to play those. There's a reason that those chords were used in those songs. But from a creative standpoint, from a songwriting standpoint, seventh chords to me really capture those different, unique, nuanced, specific emotions. So the seventh chords give us a little deeper emotional vocabulary. So personally speaking, when I'm songwriting, being that most of my songs are sort of in the folk, pop, indie, rock genre, that I am using predominantly major chords and minor chords, but there are times when those just don't get the job done, and I need very specific emotion. Also have the other extended chords, ninths, 11ths, 13ths, and we just don't have time for that in this lesson, but we will get there down the line. We'll talk about those other extended chords, and fundamentally they're just built the same way as the seventh chords. Okay, so I know that today's lesson was a big one. We learned about seventh chords. We learned how to make them, how they sound, how you know what different seventh chords you have in a certain key. So if you have made it this far, thank you for following along. If you've been through the other courses in this series, then I appreciate you so much wanting to learn these things. And also, if you're new, if you're just stopping by, consider going and checking out some of the other videos. We got a lot of stuff on the music theory basics. Let me know that you watched to the end. Let me know that you appreciate it. And if you have any suggestions for future videos that you want to see me make, let me know in the comment section, as well as asking any questions if there's anything I glossed over today that you would like some more understanding on, or if there's anything that really helped things click today, let me know in the comment section. I really appreciate it. As always, thank you for following along. Thanks for playing, and thanks for making the world a more musical place. I'll see you in the next one.